We do not know why we are here. We do not know why everything outside the silo is as it is. We do not know when it will be safe to go outside. We only know that day is not this day.
In a seemingly dystopian future, a thriving population resides within the silo, an underground settlement consisting of 144 levels. After starting his day with a cup of coffee, Sheriff Holston Becker locks himself inside a cell, much to the dismay of his co-worker, Chief Deputy Sam Marnes. Holston then surprises him by expressing his desire to venture outside, a sentence once spoken that becomes irrevocable. With the outside world dangerous and uninhabitable, the irrevocable words are believed to basically be a death sentence. 3 years earlier, Holston and his wife Allison received joyous news that the ruling elite of the silo have granted their long-awaited request for a child. During breakfast, Gloria Hildenbrandt, a fertility consultant, approaches them, seeking a conversation with Allison. However, the couple disregards her presence. As the year draws to a close, Holston and Allison struggle to conceive a child, despite their best efforts. One day, George Wilkins, the owner of a repair shop, contacts Allison at work and asks for her assistance. Intrigued, Allison goes to the store where George reveals that he possesses an uncrackable drive and requests her help. Together, they discover that the drive is untraceable as it predates the rebellion in the silo. The rebellion remains shrouded in mystery, with the inhabitants of the silo being informed that it took place 140 years ago and resulted in the destruction of all records, including files, drives, and books. On Freedom Day, a holiday commemorating the end of the rebellion, they managed to decipher the contents of the drive. To their astonishment, the footage reveals a world outside the silo that starkly contrasts with the daily displays of chaos and devastation shown on screens. During a conversation with Gloria, Allison discovers that her birth control device was never removed, intentionally preventing her from getting pregnant. This revelation prompts her to remove it herself. Weak and covered in blood, she heads to the cafeteria to address everyone, exposing the deception. Allison then also reveals that the screens broadcast manipulated footage and insists on the right to go outside, a demand that must be respected according to the pact, the law within the silo. Those who are permitted to venture outside are asked to clean the outer camera, removing the accumulated dirt and filth, so the outside view remains visible. Before departing, Allison tells Holston that the people who previously went outside probably cleaned the camera in hopes of showing everyone that the outside world is beautiful and habitable. She promises him to clean the camera if the outside is indeed habitable, and if it's not, she will only wave. As proof of her claim, she ventures outside and proceeds to clean the camera, but soon after, collapses and dies. 2 years later, Holston still lives in solitude and despair until he learns about George's apparent suicide and meets Juliet Nichols. Juliet, an engineer, claims that George was murdered. Returning to the present, Holston confides in Deputy Marnes his plan to search for his wife, even though she seems dead just a screen away. Holston finally steps outside and realizes that Allison was right. The outside world is indeed vibrant and intact. As he cleans the camera, he removes his helmet and instantly begins to choke. Those inside the silo witness him struggling and collapsing near his wife's body. Seeing this, Juliet erupts in rage, accusing Holston of lying. Signs of unrest spread throughout the silo, prompting Judicial, one of the 2 law enforcement organizations within the silo, with the other one being the sheriff's office, to send agents, under the command of Head of Security Robert Sims, to address the situation. With Sheriff Holston out of the picture, Mayor Ruth Johns and Deputy Marnes discuss potential candidates for the vacant position. A couple of months prior, it is shown that Juliet and George were engaged in an affair. One day, George approaches Juliet intending to disclose something important. However, he never arrives, and when Juliet learns of his death the following day, she crumbles, suspecting foul play because his body was discovered at the bottom of a staircase, having fallen a significant distance. Holston and Deputy Marnes interrogate Juliet about her belief that George was murdered. In exchange for Holston's commitment to keep the information confidential, Juliet reveals that George left behind a candy dispenser and a note with the words, "Remember where you were the last time you saw this. I found what I was looking for." Intrigued, Holston follows Juliet to a secret underground chamber underneath the silo, containing a massive digging machine, which was most likely used to build the silo. The two companions journey to George's makeshift camp there, where Juliet uncovers a backpack filled with hard drives and a manual on how to access them. Allison's handwriting covers the manual, prompting Holston to instruct Juliet to lay low while he investigates further. He assures her that he will signal her if he discovers anything. In the present, Deputy Marnes informs the mayor of Sheriff Holston's final message, expressing Holston's desire for Juliet to be appointed as the new sheriff. Meanwhile, Juliet descends even deeper into the secret chamber using a rope, hoping to find additional clues as George had indicated, but only finds a large body of water. Juliet then returns to the surface with her search proving fruitless. She drowns her sorrow in alcohol and wakes up with a hangover. Suddenly, she senses a rumble and hurries down to the mechanical floor, where she works to inspect the generator that powers the entire silo. Meanwhile, the mayor and Deputy Marnes descend the silo to meet with Juliet. Along the way, they find themselves on the judicial floor, but decide to bypass it due to their strained relationship with judicial. Instead, they encounter Bernard Holland, the head of IT, who reminds them of the urgency in finding a new sheriff. Seeking information about Juliet, the mayor approaches Juliet's estranged father, Pete Nichols, and her close colleague and friend, Martha Walker, with both of them speaking highly of her. During their break, the mayor and Deputy Marnes are interrupted by Sims, who suggests a man named Paul Billings, who is a member of the judicial branch, as a potential sheriff candidate. However, the mayor quickly dismisses the idea. Continuing her voyage, the mayor finally meets with Juliet and offers her the sheriff's position, presenting her with Holston's badge, which Holston intended for her to have. Before accepting, Juliet sets a condition for accepting the role. She must be permitted to repair the severely damaged generator, which would result in an 8-hour power outage throughout the entire silo. However, with the repair comes the risk of losing the generator and its power forever. The mayor agrees, and Juliet, accompanied by her colleagues, sets to work. The task is perilous, involving the repair of a damaged fan blade. After a grueling and intense session that could have resulted in fatal consequences for some, they successfully restore the generator thanks to Juliet and Cooper's diligent efforts, with Cooper being her shadow, a mentee who will eventually succeed the mentor. With the repairs completed, Juliet prepares to assume the role of sheriff and has another look at Holston's badge. Carved in the back of it, she reads the word, "Truth." Celebrating the success of the generator repairs, the mayor and Marnes, who have feelings for each other, prepare to spend the evening together. However, Mayor Ruth suddenly collapses and starts convulsing and bleeding from her mouth, with Deputy Barnes standing helplessly over her. A devastated Deputy Marnes is mourning the death of Mayor Ruth. He discusses the situation with Bernard and Sims and believes that rat poison was used to kill the mayor since it cannot be traced in the body. Even more suspicious is the fact that the mayor drank from Marnes' bottle, suggesting it was likely poisoned with Marnes' assassination in mind. Bernard, who is now acting mayor, calls Juliet in and informs her that he will shortly be swearing her in as sheriff. Sandy, the sheriff's office assistant, shows a slight bias toward Juliet as she walks to her desk. As a result of Sandy's condescending attitude, Juliet is unable to gain entry to the secure files and the weapon storage area until after she is sworn in. Juliet later asks her for George's file, but Sandy tells her that that's the only file they don't have. In a flashback to Juliet's childhood, she is shown throwing away her mother's and brother's belongings, as they both have passed away, With her mother and brother gone, she lives alone with her father, but their relationship is strained and becomes even more so after an argument with him. Being interested in mechanics, she decides to go to the lower levels of mechanical and meets Martha for the first time, with whom she stays for a while. She works hard under the mentorship of Martha, but soon her father shows up and wants her to come back home. When Juliet tells him she's happy in mechanical, her father allows her to stay, wanting what's best for her. In the present, Bernard swears Juliet in as sheriff, and Sandy hands her a file that Holston intended for her to have. Before she can look at the file, she goes to stop Deputy Marnes, who has gotten into a scuffle with a guy named Frankie, whom he thinks poisoned the mayor given his history with similar substances. After the incident, Juliet and Marnes have a conversation in which she details her experiences with Holston and reveals the word truth is engraved on Holston's sheriff badge. Striking a deal with Marnes, she promises to help him find out who killed the mayor if he'll help her find out what happened to George. Together, they go looking for answers and head to Doris Kennedy's house, but find out via her husband Patrick that Doris has been dead for a year. Back in her office, Juliet hears a rattling noise coming from the vents and investigates it. In the vent, she discovers George's file stuffed inside a bag, probably put there by Holston. Meanwhile, an intoxicated Deputy Marnes is attacked in his own home. He loses the fight and is held at gunpoint by an unnamed man. With his attacker showing no mercy for him, Deputy Marnes is found dead in his room. Sims quickly announces that Paul Billings will replace Marnes. Needing to spin a story around the recent murders, Bernard advises that they bury both the mayor and Marnes in the same grave, and fabricate a story about how they were forbidden to be together as a way to explain their sudden deaths. In the sheriff's office, Sandy offers that if Juliet helps her uncover Marnes' murderer, she will help her find out what happened to George. She also warns Juliet that someone will soon be framed for the murder, because Judge Meadows, the head of Judicial, doesn't care about the truth, but simply wants to maintain order and prevent a rebellion. Sometime later, Juliet breaks into Patrick Kennedy's home. There, she finds framed evidence including Marnes' artwork and rat poison, proving that he is the one who will be framed for the murders. She quickly hides Patrick away, so nobody can charge him with anything. When Billings visits Sims to seemingly rat on Juliet, the man who killed Marnes is sitting in Sims' office. Sims introduces him as Doug Trumbull, his potential shadow. After his visit to Judicial, Billings informs Juliet that they are attempting to get rid of her by giving her the wrong suspect, in order to show everyone how incompetent she is, while they, Judicial, arrest the framed Patrick due to the planted evidence. Being one step ahead of Judicial, Juliet awaits them in front of Patrick's home. When Doug shows up to get to Patrick, she accuses him of setting up the scene. Compromised, Doug flees with Juliet chasing him. However, Doug manages to escape after almost killing Juliet. Later that night, Doug is confronted by Sims about his failures. Having lost faith in him, Sims throws him over the railing, killing him for his mistakes and tying up loose ends. The following day, Juliet discusses Doug with Judge Meadows, but the judge doesn't want her to spend more time on him since he's dead, and they have found the killer of the mayor and Marnes. Back at her desk, she learns that Sandy has been voluntarily reassigned. After talking to her, she learns that Sandy is relieved about the move because she feels that someone is watching her closely in her current position. In Mechanical, Martha tells Juliet about the two mysterious points of the pact. The first mystery being that a mechanized way of going up and down is not allowed, with the second one being the inability to magnify past a certain point. Unable to answer these questions, Martha tells her that she wants her to quit as sheriff, since she is way in over her head. But Juliet believes she has earned the confidence of Bernard, and plans to utilize it to discover what happened to George, with the candy dispenser serving as her bait. Juliet and Billings head to Doug's apartment, where she has already planted evidence implicating Doug in George's murder. It doesn't take long for Billings to discover the hidden candy dispenser. After having kept the candy toy for a long time, Juliet is reminded by Billings that possessing relics, forbidden items from before the silo, for more than 12 hours without reporting them is against the law. However, Juliet seems undeterred by this warning. With a relic in her possession, Juliet meets with Judge Meadows and successfully persuades her to launch an investigation into the forbidden items, and with it, into George's death. Billings cautions Juliet that now that she's officially involved in the investigation, Judicial will closely monitor her every move. As they investigate around the silo, they encounter Regina Jackson, a woman claiming to be George's ex-girlfriend. Regina's calm reaction to George's death raises suspicion in both Juliet and Billings. Regina reveals that George, a self-centered man, joined Mechanical to seek answers to the big questions. Before Juliet leaves, Regina stops her and asks if she believes George truly loved her. Angry about the reality check, Juliet storms out. She then meets with Bernard and Sims, who confront her, revealing that the candy dispenser found in Doug's apartment wasn't there during their initial search. Sims suspects foul play, but Bernard convinces him otherwise. That evening, Juliet considers quitting her work and investigation into George's death due to the realization that he only used her for answers. She confides in Martha over the walkie-talkie, but Martha talks her out of it and tells her to finish the job. The next day, Regina informs Juliet that Judicial has been closely monitoring her, recounting an incident when someone followed her home and demanded the identities of all the relic merchants. To protect her family, she gave up George as one of the relic traders. Regina then reveals that she obtained another dangerous relic in exchange for George's hard disk. The mentioned relic is a book titled Amazing Adventures in Georgia, which Regina hands over to Juliet. Back at her apartment, Juliet is stunned as she flips through the book. Unbeknownst to her, two individuals observe her through a hidden camera, and one of them proceeds to inform their boss about their findings. In the medical ward, Gloria, the fertility expert, savors her time on the beach before being abruptly pulled back to the harsh reality of her room, where she is sedated. Meanwhile, Juliet discovers signatures of Gloria and other individuals in the book she obtained from Regina. Acting upon her findings, Juliet visits Gloria. However, Gloria is in no condition to provide answers, being heavily medicated and unable to communicate effectively. Juliet discovers that only Judge Meadows has the authority to stop Gloria's medication. Desperate for answers, she decides to confront Meadows directly. To her surprise, Meadows appears frail and scared, suggesting that she is merely following orders rather than acting maliciously. Frustratingly, Meadows refuses to disclose any information about the people they are dealing with, leaving Juliet in the dark. Unbeknownst to her, Sims, who is revealed to be the hidden power behind the surveillance cameras, watches everyone through the carefully planted cameras in the mirrors. Oblivious to this fact, Juliet finds herself feeling lost and one step behind. Determined to find answers, Juliet seeks the assistance of her father, Dr. Pete Nichols, who has access to the medical division. Against the law and risking severe consequences, Pete agrees to temporarily release Gloria so that Juliet can question her once the effects of the drugs wear off. However, Juliet's trust in her father is shaken when Gloria accuses him of obstructing her ability to conceive in the past. Confused and suspicious, Juliet sets her father aside to allow Gloria time to calm down and reveal the secrets she knows about the silo. Gloria reveals that she is one of the few remaining Flame Keepers, a rebel group determined to preserve relics from the past, who were systematically chosen by the secret powers of the silo to not have children in order to die out. She discloses that she had given the travel guidebook to Anne Wilkins, George's mother, and also a member of the Flame Keepers. Furthermore, she reveals that Hannah Nichols, Juliet's mother, not only held a curiosity about the outside world, but also had connections to their group. The mysterious circumstances surrounding Hannah's death haunt Gloria, leaving Juliet with more questions about her mother's past. A revelation occurs when Gloria mentions that Holston, the former sheriff, instructed her to place flowers in front of the mirror. This aligns with Holston's note left for Juliet, igniting her suspicion that something is hiding within the mirror and the air ducts. Her intuition proves correct when she discovers a concealed hard drive in the air duct and a camera behind the mirror. Watching in real time, Sims realizes the threat Juliet poses after finding out about the cameras and orders her arrest. Now Juliet is not only determined to uncover the truth, but also finds herself thrust into the role of the last Flamekeeper, with Gloria urging her to escape. She becomes a target for the forces dispatched by Sims. In a flashback, a young Juliet and her mother Hannah strike a deal with a man in exchange for a sick rabbit. Returning to the present, after successfully escaping, Juliet hides in the nursery while Sims goes to Gloria's chamber to inquire about what Juliet found. Gloria mentions the presence of a sack, but admits she couldn't see what was inside, prompting Sims to drug her once again. Failing to decrypt the hard drive in the nursery, Juliet heads to the sheriff's station upon receiving a summons from Billings. At the station, she witnesses judicial agents causing havoc as they search for unregistered relics, triggering a childhood memory. In the memory, Juliet and her mother use a self-built magnifier to treat ailments, attempting surgery on the sick rabbit. However, judicial raiders soon intervene, forcing Hannah to surrender the magnifier, which is immediately destroyed. Despite her husband's denial of making the call, Hannah remains skeptical of his involvement. Returning to the present, Juliet has Sims arrested, knowing he is the one in charge, and points out that the search he ordered at the sheriff's station was illegal, according to the pact. Juliet then discovers her mother's case file in Sims's office and confronts her father to uncover the truth about her mother's fate. He reveals that after the traumatic incident with the magnifier, her mother couldn't bear it any longer and took her own life. Learning that her father didn't report her mother that day, and the raiders only arrived because they saw her through the mirror cameras, she reconciles with her father. She then intends to seek Martha's help, but finds herself unable to do so due to the extensive security measures implemented by Sims. As a last resort, Juliet seeks assistance from her friend Lucas, but he is unable to aid her. However, Bernard comes to her rescue after she is detained at a checkpoint. He takes her to a hidden cornfield to investigate the situation, while Sims manages to talk his way out of his jail cell. Unfortunately, it becomes evident that it was all an elaborate setup, with Bernard being the one actually in charge instead of Sims. While being apprehended and taken away, Juliet realizes she has no choice but to make a daring escape by jumping off the edge of a stairway. And so, she does. After tumbling down the steps, Juliet swiftly retreats to a different area of the silo, finding safety away from Sims, Billings, and the raiders. Assuming that Billings didn't do his best, Sims dismisses him, prompting a remorseful Billings to search for Juliet on his own. Bernard then advises Sims to intensify his efforts and emphasizes the urgency of finding Juliet, leading to heightened security measures in hopes of capturing her. Strangely enough, Juliet finds herself inside Sims's apartment, where she restrains Sim's wife and attempts to use their computer to gain access to the drive. Since the drive can only be accessed from authorized machines, she successfully manages to gain entry. Meanwhile, Billings arrives at Juliet's apartment, but encounters an ongoing raid, prompting him to wait until it concludes before entering. Eventually, he discovers the book that Gloria had given Juliet, leaving him utterly shocked and moved to tears. Hoping to find Juliet sooner, Bernard interrogates Lucas and learns that the hard drive serial number is 18. As Juliet accesses the drive, she watches a video created by George. However, Sims discovers her location shortly after and rushes to capture her. Meanwhile, Sims's wife manages to free herself and urges Juliet to flee before Judicial arrives. Heeding the advice, Juliet escapes. Patrick then comes to her aid by destroying some of the cameras, enabling Juliet to stealthily enter his place, where an IT expert, Danny, decrypts the drive. As the trio watches the video, George explains that he sought help from Mechanical and discovered Juliet, eventually falling in love with her. He instructs her to locate a 15-foot-tall metal door deep in the silo, without providing further details. Elsewhere, Billings tears out a single page from the book, after finishing it, and proceeds to burn the rest. Returning to the video, George reveals to Juliet that to find what she's seeking, she must search for a file titled Jane Carmody Cleaning. Juliet plays the video, in which Jane Carmody explores the vibrant and lively outside world and declares that the people of the silo have been deceived. After watching the video, Juliet, Patrick, and Danny flee as Judicial has found them and sent in raiders. They manage to escape by descending down a garbage chute and arriving on a different floor. There, Juliet connects the hard drive to the system and broadcasts the footage to the outside world to all the screens within the silo. However, Bernard quickly takes action by rebooting the entire server to prevent people from witnessing the broadcast. After separating from Patrick and Danny, Juliet tries to use the garbage chute again, but the raiders throw an AC unit down, causing her to let go and fall all the way down to mechanical. Feeling threatened by her presence, her ex-boss, Knox, gives her up. When Bernard and Sims arrive, they destroy the hard drive and subsequently arrest Juliet. Bernard proposes a deal to her. If she waives her right to a hearing and agrees to be sent directly for cleaning duty, he will spare her friends and all those involved. Understandably, she accepts the offer. Before locking her up, Bernard finally shows Juliet the footage of George's death, revealing that he did indeed commit suicide to avoid being questioned about the activities of the Flamekeepers. Juliet is horrified as she watches the grim scene unfold. Meanwhile, Lucas receives a harsh punishment and is sentenced to 10 years in the mines by Bernard. On another front, Billings discloses to his wife that Judicial and Sims know he has the syndrome, a sickness within the silo, but that they are making an exception for him to become sheriff. Several levels down, Martha sends Juliet a heartfelt note expressing her love and assuring her that the suit she will wear is completely safe and secure. Bernard then meets with Juliet and explains how she became a threat to the silo, mentioning that even he doesn't have answers to the many unexplained mysteries left behind by the founders, the people who built the silo. As a parting gift, he presents her with Holston's sheriff badge. Soon after, a large crowd gathers to witness Juliet's walk to the outside. During the walk, Juliet is taken aback when she sees the exact same footage from Jane's video playing on her display, making her realize that her helmet is showing pre-recorded footage. As she ventures outside, she refrains from cleaning the camera and places the sheriff's badge on Holston's body. The environment around her then glitches, resembling a hologram. She soon realizes that all the previous cleaners must have been given faulty heat tape with their suits, allowing toxic air to enter and claim their lives. However, her suit proves to be fully protective, as Martha mentioned in the note to her that she made sure that Juliet's suit was tightened with quality heat tape. Inside the silo, Bernard runs to the server room, which he opens with a key labeled 18, and turns off Juliet's fake display. She then witnesses the world as it truly is, a barren wasteland devoid of all life, revealing that the screens inside really did display the world's true state. She continues her journey and discovers there are not just one, but many other silos surrounding theirs.